Okay, I'm making another decision as chair. I am going to go to a item that I put on the agenda for council members. If there were any presentations, I only have one presentation that was requested to be made, and I'm going to give that to Mr. Bynum. I'm going to allow Mr. Bynum 20 minutes for that presentation. When Mr. Bynum is finished, we're going to go to public testimony. So I've kind of shifted the order here. And then at the end, I'm going to invite the finance director back so we could have individual Q&A for him. So on that note, we have enough members to start. Mr. Raposo had to leave shortly for a personal matter, and then somewhere during in the next 20 minutes or so, Mr. Chalk will be stepping out. But everyone will be back for the public testimony portion. Okay, on that note, I think he's asking for the clicker.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go into my fast forward mode because I have a lot of information to share. To the best of my ability, what I'm sharing is public record. Figures from our audited reports and from our public record of what we actually did. In politics, there's a lot of rhetoric. A lot of people say a lot of things. And you can even say things that are accurate that don't really enlighten. Okay? And so I want to the best of my ability, present what we actually did as a county and the decisions we actually made that led us to this. Okay, so if we go to the first slide, this has, I want you to look at the red and green lines. That is our general fund income versus expenditures for the last 15 years. Okay, so you can see that the county of Kauai grew dramatically. Okay, the county expanded in size dramatically. Okay, this tells you about the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Office of Boards and Commissions that was created by the taxpayers that substantially added to our costs. But no question the county grew. And there's no question that the economic downturn happened, that the tide started turning in 2008. We knew that that was happening. And now, so you look at the spending. This red line is spending. It went up, 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 up. This is right when Mayor Bernard came in. And you've heard people say, we spent the surplus. It's not true. We didn't spend it because Mayor Bernard gave us 2 years where spending actually went down. That's very difficult to do because you have unions that get raises and a lot of fixed costs. So we did respond to this economic downturn by tightening the belt, by looking at savings. Then it went up some, but look what happened to revenue. Now this is, revenue is going up. This little bump down here is the result of the cap coming in place, primarily. It did protect a number of homeowners, but at the expense of others. But as a class, you know, that relief was short-lived, and that's why we needed to revisit it. So you look at this green note, look at this right here. Let's go to the next slide. This is the last few years since 2008, okay? Our revenues, this is the general fund revenues, went down dramatically. There's the 3 years that the mayor actually lowered our spending each year. And the revenues, you know, so in 2010 was almost, but look what happened. And this gap, that's the hole, okay? Because we weren't managing our government, we weren't managing our revenues, okay? Then we had a second hole. This is the TAT effect over the last 3 fiscal years, okay? First 3 million, then 7, this year 9. This year we're dealing with right now, that's last year 9. So we had decreased revenue, spending flat, decreased revenue, chipping away. So let's look at that a little bit year by year. How did we deal with that? 2008, we had a $4 million difference between spending and revenue. That should have been a red flag for us. The general fund balance at that time was $45 million, okay? What significant tax proposals came in that year? There was no rate change, but there was a combat veterans tax credit that Councilmember Raposo put forward that passed. And there was a major tax reform proposed by Mayor Baptiste called Real Property Initiative.
You have combat tax failed.
Yes, it was a real property tax proposal, combat tax fed. Oh, it didn't fail, it passed.
Oh.
I'm sorry, that's an error. It passed unanimously. However, the Mayor Baptiste came here and told us, hey, you know what? The cap ain't working for us. It's protecting some people. So let me tell you right now, we set the cap based on 2003 assessed values, and they were lousy. There were neighborhoods that got capped so low that people paid $25 or $30 taxes for the next 15 years. There were other neighborhoods that got reassessed that year and got capped higher. So how much the cap affected you was based on luck. Were you in a lucky neighborhood or an unlucky neighborhood? But each year, as a new, say your child, your son buys a property, their taxes are going to get reset, and because they weren't protected by the cap, and that caused these inequities, and we'll see how big they were in a minute. But we're in 2008. We know the turn's coming. Mayor Baptiste comes to us and says, you know what? We have to lower taxes for all of the people who live and work here. The hotels and resorts haven't been paying enough. We need to lower taxes, and we'll eliminate the cap by lowering everybody's taxes, so when we remove it, it won't be a problem, okay? Now, the cap was one way to deal with this, but our tax ordinance requires this council to set the tax rates every year. If the values go up, we should reduce the rates so you don't get an increased bill. And our ordinance requires this body to do that calculation each year at budget, okay? So I supported this. This would have reduced taxes by 35% for the people in the homestead, right? I'm talking about the Mayor Baptiste proposal in 2008 that was rejected by this council. The vote was, I think there were 4 in support, but it was a long story. It's just reality. Mayor Baptiste identified these inequities and gave us a solution, but we chose not to do it. Okay, so here we go into the next year. No changes in rates, no significant tax proposals, but our revenues were closer. We only went down about $1 million that year. Okay, so then we go to the next year. We're losing revenue now. In 2010, we're losing revenue, and I'll show you in a minute where we lost it. And I propose that we increase the hotel and tax rate 60 cents, because their taxes were falling. Assessed values were coming down. We didn't adjust the rate. And so that meant hotels and resorts paid a lot less. And this 60-cent increase would not have been an increase in their tax bill. It just would have kept us from losing more revenue. Okay? And so we're just kind of cruising along here, watching these things happen and not doing anything about it, right? Every year, the mayor put forward a proposal that had no rate changes, that had nothing to address this problem, okay? So what is the problem? Here's what I showed when we established the 305 tax rate. This is what we're talking about here. At 305, these are the market taxes on a $500,000 house, the red dots. The changes you see are about senior discounts or low income, things that we understand. But people are in a reasonable range, okay? But this lucky guy got capped at 572, right, in 2003. Now this guy is paying $1,700 because he was in an unlucky neighborhood, or they purchased the home later and got reset at a different. So this is the inequities we were talking about, okay? Now, what I proposed one year was let's just do what Baptiste said. Let's lower taxes for everyone, right? So these dots are taxpayers. These are real people, okay? This is I can put a thing on there and find out who they are. But, and so what Baptiste said is, hey, let's do this. Let's lower the line down further and then give these people, because look at this guy. How do we justify this guy paying $1,700 and an equally valued home at $500? I can show you anyway, and this is all over the map. So, but the council said no. So now we come up to 2011. Now the gap between revenue and expenditures is getting huge, 17 million in 1 year. That means our fund balance is going to start going down, right? Because when there's a gap, how do you fill it? You know, you fill it with your reserves. And we had substantial reserves in 2011, okay? Finally, people were paying attention, okay? Real property rates, so nobody's still trying to change the rates, but actually this should be, there was 2 proposals introduced. One was by me to increase the exemptions, right? They were at 48, I wanted to go to 96. That would have meant tax relief for people who live and work here. It didn't happen. The administration did introduce tax reform bills late in that year. So here's, now it's 2008 to 2011, we had all this lost revenue, right? Well, let's look at it by class. This is single-family residential without homeowners. So these are people who use their rent, they own their home, but they use it for commercial purposes, long-term rentals. Those people had a $6 million reduction in 3 years. If their taxes would have stayed the same, they went down $6 million. This is apartments or vacation rentals, right? They went down $4 million. Commercial, industrial, not much change. Agricultural land, that's the big landowners that own huge parcels and other ag lands. Their taxes went down 6.87. Now, it's like if they would have paid the same as 2008, right? But they paid 6.87 million less, okay? Conservation, less homeowners. Hotel resorts came down 2.6 million during that period, okay? What happened to the residents? How much did we come down during that period? No, we went up 2.15 million. So the 3-year difference, 20 million of lost revenue that went to non-residents, people who live elsewhere, or people who, there might be a resident who owned a property, but they were using it for commercial purposes, right? So I'd had it with that, you know, and I came here every year and put these charts up every year and said, hey, what's going on, right? So I introduced Bill 2425 in 2012 when we lost 17 million. And what I said at the front of the year is there was no will to remove the cap. The mayor didn't want to remove the cap. The council members have made it clear that this cap was, now I'm telling you though, the cap was protecting some of you at the expense of many others. And I don't think you like that. And so, but that cap provides all this predictability. So I want to, by 2012, look at these numbers, okay? 5 million to resorts, almost 10 million to the large landowners here in ag, less taxes. And here's an example that I presented in 2010. You own a vacation rental, you were paying $20,000, your taxes have gone down to 17, or this one went from 10 to 6. Okay, so people who, that just automatically. So what would a Bill 2425 done? I worked hard with the county attorney and presented a bill. It would have reset the cap and left it in place. Okay, so everybody that had the cap, taxes would continue to pay them, and the people who were up here would come down and get the cap established for them. Okay, let me show you that graphically again. This is an example, but this would have brought this line down much further, right? And so let's look at this. That bill would have said this guy's taxes comes down to $12.50. This guy comes down to $12.50, reasonable. This guy is below the cap, he gets grandfathered, he stays there. And the taxes just come up gradually 2% a year like the cap was. Or this person sells and then it gets reset at the market rate, okay? So I put forward a proposal here that said, let's do what Baptiste said. Let's lower taxes for everyone because these hotels and resorts are not paying enough. They're just not. And now by this, we were losing money from that sector. We were losing 10 million that visitors used to pay. And we got that from you, right? And I disagreed with that and I put this bill forward. Joanne voted for that bill and 5 council members did not, okay? That proposal was combined with, that proposal at the time said, let's also reduce the tax rate. Yeah, let's do the homeowner's exemption, reduce the rate to bring the line down like this 225 rate would have done, okay? Now, this blue line is what we were told for 5 years was the impact of the cap, okay? That it dramatically decreased taxes, but then in 2008, they started going back up. That's why I put this proposal forward. It's like the cap's not working for everyone anymore. It's not doing that. Later, I demanded that we see all of the data for all homeowners, and when I got that data, because I wanted to see how these changes impact each and every one of you individually. I wanted to be able to plug in a name or a TMK and say, what's that taxpayer going to experience in order to make informed decisions? And we found out that the actual numbers, if you included all the homeowners under the cap, it reduced taxes from 11% to 10%, but then right away started going back up. We weren't even being given accurate information. So by 2013, boy, everybody was, so I put this proposal forward that would have kept the cap in place, grandfathered everyone else in. I couldn't get the votes. But then we did, that year, I was also proposing lowering the tax rates like I had repeatedly. And this year, the council agreed. At our budget, we set the 305 tax rate that reduced taxes about $1.4 million, I think. But I was seeking a $5 million adjustment, not $1.4 million, to get justice. So now all of a sudden you see rate changes happening. This is the one. Homestead class went from, now the mayor opposed that. We wouldn't have gotten those tax reliefs. This council agreed on a 4-3 vote to lower the taxes. Okay, that's the only tax decrease that the homestead class has seen in all these years. Okay, and you know who voted for this and who voted against it is public record. Okay, now other changes were made because we used to have land and there was some increase. But these were kind of revenue neutral for hotel and resort. No changes in these other. But then you start seeing the things that Steve was talking about today, the targeted tax relief, the minimum real property tax, the low and moderate income, okay? Now, that same year, I tried to reduce the rate from 305 to 225. That's 2 years ago, right? So remember these charts? I said, let's do this. Let's bring taxes down because we're in the reset year, okay? So 2013, though, this rate reduction proposal from 305 to 225 failed 3-4. Council members Hooser and Yukimura joined me in that proposal just 2 years ago. That would have, now the council rejected the idea of grandfathering everyone so there's no increases. So I went and said, okay, let's lower the rate for everybody so at least the increases are fewer people and less dramatic. Unfortunately, that didn't pass. So remember I said Mayor Baptiste wanted to change taxes in 2008? This is a slide from what he presented in 2008. And it says, equal and fair treatment of first-time home buyers versus PHU program. Because what would happen is, and we had testimony dramatic here, a young person, you know, home values actually fell. Your taxes kept going up, everybody else went down. But our young people, some of them could have got homes then. And you look in the MLS listing, it says the taxes is $700. And they go to their mortgage guy and they say, hey, I can qualify for this loan. And then they find out that the taxes, no, they're actually going to get reset to $2,000. Your taxes are going to be $100 a month more than this person, and suddenly couldn't qualify for the loan. So this has real world impact when you have these huge discrepancies. So he wanted to put the homeowner's exemption at $300, $325, $350. That's a progressive tax system that says people who have modest homes, low income, going to pay the least. People that have large, huge homes that are valued at $1 million can pay some more, a little more. Okay, that's when our exemptions were only 48. He paid us this proposal. He said, look, I'm proposing, where is it? Homestead. Homeowners go down 35%. How do we pay for that? Hotels go up 25%. Apartments, which is vacation rentals, go up 15%. Improved residential, that's not owner occupied, right, that's used commercially, goes up 21%. But we will reduce taxes for people who live and work here. This proposal failed. And I've been trying to do a version of this proposal ever since. Now we come to the, here's what for one example, this is what the cap did, okay? Here's this guy's, this is a nice home in Lihue, a real place, $524 taxes, and they went up $500. That's why people were screaming. That's when the cap went in place, right? Because of this increase. That didn't have to happen. Remember, our tax ordinance says if the values go up, council, set the rate accordingly so the bills don't go up. Well, we didn't do that. We didn't change tax rates in this county for like 13 years, right? We were asleep at the wheel. And so, but we protected this homeowner, and you can see what their taxes did. Predictable, all those things we like. Set, predictable.
20 minutes.
But this is what happened to the market tax. So now your son buys a home, the neighbors are paying $1,200, but he's paying $2,057, right? That's why this happened. And in order to do that, we had to have this credit, okay? I liked that idea. That's why I said let's reset it, make it more equitable on current values, and make it work for new people going forward, but protect those people below. But then, and this is in the public record, council members at this table said, no, we're not going to do that. The cap's the problem. We're going to get rid of the cap. And so the mayor came back here with a proposal to get rid of the cap.
I just want to share with you the 20 minutes is finished, so if you could summarize.
If I could summarize. I want to go back to this. Okay, that's our current market taxes at the 305 rate. We can lower the rate and change the outcomes. I'm not going to have time, but I input, it's over there on the live spreadsheet, that I can look every one of you and look at your taxes and tell you what happened to you this year and why. That's the spreadsheet I gave to every council member here, and I showed it on the thing during budget when I said, if we don't make these changes now, you all would be here today. I predicted this. It's in the public record. And the council chose, and that's in the public record. This year, Councilmember Hooser and I put forward a proposal to reduce the rates that would have lowered the number of people that had increases by over 2,000, and it would have made those people who had increases have a much smaller ones. It's on the public record that Gary and I had 2 votes for that, and we didn't have the other 5. This council decided to say, no, we need to protect hotels and resorts more, because the mayor said $11 for hotels and resorts. And council members around this table said, nope, that's too much for hotels to pay. Even though this $10 million came out from the TAT, that's too much. We have to protect the hotels, so no tax rates cuts for local people, right? For the 5th year in a row. Thank you. Those are facts.